Hey, my name is Eric Latender. This is a series of videos that I've been doing during the kind of social distance shutdown that we're all going through right now. We talked about social distance in dogs. I talked about when will this end? And today I want to talk about distractions. There's one thing that I'm trying to do right now is keep myself distracted. I try to read a little bit more, trying to write a little bit more. I'm making these videos because if I don't keep myself distracted like everybody else, you watch the news and you listen to the news and that, just starts to pile up, and that's when you get anxious. And who wants to be like that? I like to be positive and try to keep moving forward. So I'm keeping myself distracted. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. But distractions for your dog. The thing is that we don't want your dog to get distracted when you are doing obedience with them. So if you're out for a walk with your dog, you want your dog to maintain and walk with you as there's distractions, because you don't want them dragging you all over the place. If your dog is off leash and they're 20, 30 feet away from you or even further, and they're interested in something, distracted, you need the dog to come back to you. If your dog is doing a place command and if there's distractions, you want your dog to maintain the behavior. So how do you work your dog through distractions? The first step is that you want to help the dog learn to work through the distraction. So you always start by setting the dog up to be successful. Try not to set them up to fail. And the thing is that when you first introduce the distraction, they're gonna fail. That's normal. But you try to set it up so that they fail in a way that they can learn. And I know this sounds like crazy, but hang with me. I'm gonna explain this. I'm gonna break it down for you. So the thing that I always like to teach in my classes is what I call the Premack principle, or Grandma's law. Have you ever heard of Grandma's law? Premack principle? It's probably been done to you without you even realizing it. Premack principle, or Grandma's law, basically means getting the dog or the person to do a lower probability behavior when they want to do a higher probability behavior. Perfect example, a human example. You're a little kid, you go to your grandmother's house for lunch, right? And all your cousins are there. After lunch, you've all planned to go play football. So you can't wait. If you really like football, you can't wait to go play football with your cousins. So you eat lunch and then you're heading for the door because you're gonna go play football. And you're so excited about it, you can't wait to get out into the field. But right before you get out the door, your grandmother stops you. And she says, "Oh, you boys wanna play football? Well, before you play football, you gotta wash that pile of dishes over there. Okay, and you gotta clean up the table, right? So now you have to do this behavior, the dishes, a behavior that you do not wanna do in order to get what you do want to do, football. And you can use this with dogs. And this is how I start off with distraction training with my dogs, because it sets them up to be successful. At first they're going to fail, but then they're going to figure it out and they're going to be successful really fast. So if Sky's on place and I drop a treat, now Sky obviously understands, right? I drop a whole bunch of treats. She knows not to go for the treats because I've taught her that if she maintains the behavior, she'll eventually get what she wants. So when the first time I did this with Sky, I dropped the treat, she naturally went for it. And I taught her a non-reward marker. We've been talking a lot about markers lately. We've talked about good, which is a duration marker. We talked about YES, which is a release marker. And I also teach a non-reward marker, which is wrong. So the first time I did this, I went to go put the treat on this ground. Sky started going for the treat. I told her wrong. And I made sure that I pulled the treat away before she could get it. Wrong, I pulled it away. I put her back onto place and dropped the treat again. She went for it again. Wrong, I pulled it away. Put her back on place, I dropped the treat again. This time she didn't go for it. I waited a few seconds and then, yes, good dog. And then she was released. If your dog understands a duration marker, if they understand a release marker, and you can start teaching them a non-reward marker, which means you ain't getting it until you do it correctly. So when I first started teaching Sky, as I said, I would have her on place. I go to put the treat on the ground. She makes her move, wrong, and I pulled the treat away before she could get it. It's key. You gotta make sure you control the situation. My grandmother didn't wait until we got out into the yard and then called us in, because that would have been hard, right? She blocked us at the door. Your grandmother would block you at the door and stop you before you could get out into the yard. And this is why when you're training your dog, you want to control the situation in the early stages. You have to. You can do this with the recall command. I could throw a ball, the dog starts to go for it, I could use a long line, to bring the dog to a stop, call them back to me, yes, and then they go get it. I can do this with a treat by putting it on the ground. They go for the treat, wrong, I can pull it away. Put it back down, as long as I'm controlling it, they'll learn it, and then yes, they can go get it. Again, what you would do, as you were going to put the treat on the ground, if the dog starts to go for it, wrong, and you would pull it away. Wrong, pull it away. Put them back on place, tell them good, duration marker, good. Put it back on the ground, good, yes, and there she goes. So this is how you start working on distractions. You start applying the Premack principle, or Grandma's law. Premack, by the way, was a scientist. That was his name. And he was doing this with mice. The way I understood it was there was water, a little wheel, and some food. And if the mouse was hungry, he could get the mouse to run on the wheel, and then he would give him the food. So that's what they really wanted, but they had to do this first. Then if they were thirsty, he would make them eat some food, and then they got what they really wanted. And he did this with all three. Whatever they wanted, he would control it, and they'd have to do something that they didn't want to do to get what they did want. So this is very, very, very strong technique to do with your dog. Let's say I'm walking down the street, and my dog sees a fire hydrant that they want to go sniff. I know my dog wants to sniff the fire hydrant. What most people do is they hang on and let the dog pull them. Now the dog's been rewarded for pulling to the fire hydrant. Now every time they see a fire hydrant, they're going to pull, making the pulling stronger because it's getting rewarded. Instead, you can make the dog drift out towards the fire hydrant, then you can call them because you got the leash attached. Come, use the leash, they come into you, yes! Now they can go sniff the fire hydrant. Or you could walk them, they start to pull, you can turn and walk the other way. Approach, turn, walk the other way. Wrong, walk the other way. Approach, they don't pull, yes, they get to sniff the fire hydrant. So when people think about reward-based training, like, oh, I'm not gonna use treats, or I don't wanna use treats. It's not just treats, it's whatever the dog wants. I work with plenty of dogs that are not food motivated, which I don't like. I like when dogs food motivated. It makes training way, way, way easier. But food is just a part of the process. It's a reward. Reward could be anything. It doesn't have to be food, it could be a ball, it could be a toy. Praise, except dogs get praised all day long. So why would they work for it? This is how you want to start introducing distractions, just like I showed you, okay? And then you can start to add in all different types of distractions and see if your dog starts to understand. Okay, there you go. Good. Good. I'm going to throw some food down, so just be careful. I'm going to throw some more food down. So a great way to introduce distractions is to do it using the Premack principle, Grandma's law, because it helps the dog learn much faster than just nailing the dog, right? Because the old school traditional way, throw the treat on the ground, the dog goes for it, bang, leash correction, e-collar correction, something, right? But what we want the dog is we want the dog thinking. We don't want to just nail the dog. There is a point where you do add a correction, absolutely, but not in the first stages of distractions. First stage of distractions, you want the dog to be successful. They're gonna make a mistake, but when they make that mistake, you want them to figure it out as opposed to just nailing them, right? Because now that makes training kind of intimidating and scary, and it gets a little confusing for the dog. I want the dog to be very clear. Yeah, eventually you'll get that. First, you got to do this. So practice that with your dog. It's a lot of fun to do too. It's way more fun than just nailing the dog for making a mistake. But mistakes are part of the process, especially when you introduce distractions. Of course they're going to make mistakes, but you want to minimize the confusion on the dog's part. So when you first start teaching distractions, use the Premack principle, Grandma's law. You'll be much more successful, and the dog will figure it out a lot faster. And then you'll start getting that reliable behavior that you're looking for. There are other steps, but this is the first part. Thanks a lot for watching. Questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and post them below. I'll try to answer all of them as fast as I can. Thanks.